Hello and welcome to the Race to Speak Up podcast. As always, I am your host, Devin Moore. Today's guest is Lakeasha Williams. Principal Lakeasha Williams is a longtime educator and principal of Shine PS 399 in Brooklyn, New York. Williams' approach to education takes into consideration all aspects of life. However, she is most known in her local area and by her students for her organization of social justice and empowerment programs and events. She is the author of 2 Amazon bestsellers. Shine On Brown Girl is the first children's book in her series. I actually met Lakeasha at the Queen's Book Fair. It was incredible. Lakeasha spoke and commanded the room at the book fair, and it made the moment even sweeter when her granddaughter showed up and she shared with all of us that her granddaughter has a nail polish line, which is wow. So welcome, Lakeasha. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining. And so now I know your name is Lakeasha, but you also have a nickname that you want to go by. So tell us your nickname.
So people lovingly know me as Shine On Lakeasha or Shine Shine.
Okay, now tell us, because I know you have Shine On Brown Girl. So tell us how that nickname arose and tell us about your book. Why don't you start off with that?
Sure. So as I just shared with you, I am the brand that represents Lakeasha Williams is Shine Shine. And Shine On Brown Girl came about as a result of the different empowerment activities that I do with the children in my school community, in the community of Flatbush, Brooklyn. You know, I have Black and brown children in my school. And during the election of Biden and Harris, we did a celebratory activity. It was a poem that was written by someone else. And I did the poem with my girls in my school community, which was an empowerment poem, helping Black and brown girls feel good about who they are and affirming who they are. And I posted the video to social media, which is typical of what we do at Shine 399, and the video went viral. But the video went viral for 2 reasons. One reason is that many folks felt as though, why was I indoctrinating the children? They felt that I should be fired. They were comparing me to Hitler, and I even received death threats. I had to actually file a police report with the nearest 6th precinct. The other reason why the video went viral is because Black and brown women around the world, it resonated with them. It spoke to something in them. And they wrote about my school community efforts in a paper in India. An Italian news station reached out to me and interviewed me. And AM New York newspaper interviewed me. Countless podcasts, and local publications as well. And so what that told me was that in the year of, the 21st century, Black and brown women around the world still feel invisible. And so I felt that I needed to do more. Like, what else could I do? And being an educator, and at this point, I had my first book, which was had already been published, Still I Thrive, which was an anthropology project dedicated to supporting adults. I felt that, let me write a children's book, kind of like summing up the importance of Black and brown girls feeling good about themselves and speaking to the experiences that they experience. So although our children are depicted in books, at this time, their stories are not necessarily told from their perspective. And so as a result of that video going viral, I decided to write my first children's book, which is an Amazon bestseller, Shine On Brown Girl, to represent the beauty and brilliance and magnificence of Black and brown girls around the world.
Thank you first off, I want to say thank you for sharing that story. I know that there was pain in it. I know that you had to do that. Like, you have to speak up. And that's why I'm so glad that you were certain things led to you being able to share your story and share brown girl stories through your children's book. I know when it comes to me, so I have my children's book, Devin Speaks Up, and it talks about not only does it talk about the in the title the importance of speaking up, but it also talks about how to be upstanders, you know, standing up for another person who isn't really who may be fearful to speak up or who doesn't know how to speak up, you know. And I'm so glad to see children's book. This is something, whenever the topic of children's book comes up, you will always hear me say these few things. I'm so glad that we have children's books that represent young Black boys, young Black girls, even Indian, Muslim, Hispanic, even disabled, you know, all these different types of things. Because when I was at the age of when when we should first start actually literally reading children's books, that should be when I saw students that looked like me in those books, but I didn't. And like I went to a predominantly white middle school. And so, you know how, okay, shine. So, you know how during those times, like if it is a predominantly white middle school, they will always have those three Black authors. It's like two Black guys and one Black woman. I think it was like Maya Angelou was the Black woman for it. And then James Baldwin and Langston Hughes. Like it was always those three that I would always see. And then being the only Black few, from my experience, being the only Black few Black students there, I was not really seeing much. I didn't see Hispanic. I should have saw more Black, but I didn't see Hispanic. I didn't see Indian. I didn't see all the Asian. I didn't see any of these other things. It wasn't even talk about disabled people. None of this was coming up. So luckily, we're able to take our experiences and educate others through children's books, excuse me, and start when start the conversation off when they're younger, geared towards their age. So that's my little rant when it comes to that. But so was writing Shine On Brown Girl a labor of love for you?
It absolutely was a labor of love, you know, and just listening to you share your story. So imagine when I was in school, right? There were definitely nothing representative of, you know, again, the beauty and brilliance of a Black woman. And it is absolutely important that our children know that, right? We have to be very mindful of the messages that our children receive on a daily basis, both direct and indirect messages. So Shine On Brown Girl was absolutely a labor of love because everything that I do with children and for children is to make sure that our children know that they are somebody and know that they are loved. And most importantly, equip them with the necessary tools and strategies that they need to continue, you know, this fight, if you will, of making sure that we are represented across all facets of our society.
See, those are actually, when you were saying that, it kind of reminds me of low self-esteem. Because when it comes to, you know, reading certain books and hearing certain things, it can either bring up your self-esteem or bring it down and just last with you. And I think having books like yours or hearing people like you who get it, I think that would bring up self-esteem. But oftentimes, I mean, things are changing. Don't get me wrong. Things are changing. I think things have come a long way. And I think we may need to still come a long way when it comes to certain things, just maybe society as a whole. But I think that in order to really have that positive change when it comes to students in schools is by starting young. So again, as I said this before, but is by starting young. So having books like this, that's truly what we need. Having anti-bullying children's books, having all these different types of things that I already listed out. That's what we need. And so just seeing a book like yours, Shine On Brown Girl, you know, Shine On Brown. Guys, make sure you look up that book. I hope you guys are looking up this book right now. Yeah, she's holding it up. For those who are, yeah, she's holding it up. Yes, but so Shine. I love that nickname. But anyways, so tell us about, I mean, I know you told us a little bit about your story, but tell us more about where your journey began. Where did you grow up? What was childhood like? Kind of tell us more about that.
So I'm actually a Southern girl. I was born in South Carolina. My family is from the South, but I was raised in New York City. So I am a Brooklyn girl. And I always like to attribute my grandmother's story as a prelude to everything that I am today. And so during the South, in the South, during the 50s and the 60s, although slavery, was over, again, the mental forms of slavery was still in place. And so where my family was from in the South, um, sharecropping was still in place, which basically meant that my family had to work the farms that the white men owned. And so my parents, who are currently in their 60s, when they were children, when they woke up in the morning, it was a choice of do they go to school or do they go to work on the farms? And we're talking about my parents who are in the 60s. And when they were children, they woke up and oftentimes they had to go work on the farms, right? That was their childhood experience. And so my grandmother in the 60s, we had the great migration from the South to the North at the time. And so my grandmother participated in that. And she left everything that she knew in the South because she wanted something different for her family. She didn't necessarily know what it was, but she knew that she wanted something different. And so everything that I am today in terms of my character, my ethics, my resilience, my persevering nature, I do attribute to my grandmother because it took courage. It took courage for a woman who knew that was all she knew. She had a large family, but my grandmother was a woman who was ahead of her time, who said, you know what, I am not going to remain in the abusive marriage. I'm not going to remain in what I feel is a hopeless situation. And I'm going to, be brave enough to embark on a new challenge because I want better for myself, for my children, and for my family. And so I oftentimes bring that up because lived experiences are just as valuable, if not more, than college experiences. And I feel that as a society, of course, a lot of weight is placed on where you went to school and how many degrees you have and what's your job title per se, right? But when we're talking about grit, those are intangibles, right, that you can't learn in school, right? So my grandmother was not formally educated. My parents were not formally educated, but everything that they had in them, they poured into me. And as a result of that, I am who I am today, this social justice community leader who believes in uplifting our children and making sure our children feel empowered, know that they are loved, and know that they are not victims. So although I know during this time of the year, we focus on just bullying awareness and different things like that, but I feel that my job here is to help as many children as I possibly can, even beyond Shine 399, right? Helping as many children as I possibly can to know that they are not victims, they are victorious, and to make sure that they have the necessary intangibles embedded within themselves and feel empowered to shine on, right? And to speak up and speak out and do the different things that, folks like me in the community are doing and folks like you in the community are doing to really and truly make a difference, not only for ourselves, but for everyone that we encounter.
Yeah, I mean, especially during times like this, National Bullying Prevention Month, this is specifically the time where we need to highlight this problem of bullying. We should always, don't get me wrong, we should always highlight and acknowledge that. And by having books, having children's books, it just trickles back to, that's how we start this conversation off. When it comes to me having this Race to Speak Up anti-bullying organization, working with Humanity Rising and other anti-bullying organizations, and meeting amazing people like yourself, talking to all these different people and getting their perspectives on the topic of bullying and how they're using their perspective and their positive solutions to help others. This is a great way to show unity, working with each other, working together, giving youth the tools that they need to make a more positive world. That's what I should say, make a more positive world. That's exactly what we should know and we should love. Everyone should. And so now, so tell us more about why you think it's important to speak up about telling children of color how amazing they are.
It is absolutely critical. You know, I fell in love with history in college because when I was in school, you know, my formal schooling years from kindergarten through high school, history was always about memorization of dates and facts and different things that happened. But when I got to college, it was more so about understanding stories. And I'll never forget that's the way that a professor that I had presented it, because I actually minored in history. And I'm a storyteller, right? I believe that all stories are powerful. And I believe that we can use stories in our efforts to, like you just said, you know, make sure that we have this positive impact, you know, throughout our world for everyone. I'm very mindful of the country that we live in, the society that we live in, and our children. Unfortunately, children of color, Black and brown children, are bombarded with negative images and messages on a daily basis. And far too often in our marginalized communities, right, our children and families reside in neighborhoods that are underfunded and lack the necessary resources that they need. So as a principal, you know, my focus was to make sure that I was able to express the fact that our children don't lack a thing from within. What our children actually lack is access and the necessary resources that they need to be able to shine and thrive in their own respective rights. And so my focus as a principal and beyond, right, is to make sure that I do everything within my power to help our children understand that message. Because oftentimes I refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like this is not what Shine is saying, right? This is research-based human theory and human development. We cannot get to the top of the pyramid of self-actualization until we address the basic needs, right? And what are the basic needs? Food, shelter, safety, loving, a sense of belonging. Like once our children are immersed in environments like that, within their homes, within the communities, within the schools, then our children can realize and achieve their fullest potential, going even as early as elementary school. So it is absolutely important to me as an educator that our children get this message, get the access, get the exposure, have the platform, so that these are things that live with them throughout. And I know that my journey as an educator and as a principal of Shine Good, and I was to make sure my children got that message and knew that message every day. And my hopes is that as I continue forward, you know, in my educational journey, that I continue to give back to the community and uplift as many children as I possibly can. So with my company that I founded during the pandemic, Brick House Unlimited, my simple, like my vision is simple, right? Strengthening our families, strengthening our communities. If we strengthen our communities, that would yield stronger families, and therefore we can have stronger schools and better schools, because it is all connected. And so that is the goal of, you know, Brick House Unlimited, to transcend what's happening in our schools, but to make sure that the necessary work that needs to be done in the community is interconnected with our children and families. And that is absolutely what our children need. And I believe that that's my purpose here in life, is to make sure that I am a part of the solution, to make sure that our children know that they're loved, to make sure that our children have the access, and to make sure that as often as I possibly can, that our children are embedded with those daily messages to know that you are powerful, you are loved, you are somebody, and you can and will do whatever it is that you want to do to impact the world. So my message to children is not about what they want to do or be when they grow up, right? But my message to children is, what problems do you see that exist in our world that you want to change? Because we are equity warriors and we are a part of, right, the solution to making sure that this is a better society for all of us. And yes, our children are powerful beyond measure, and they can get this message and they retain this message as early as elementary school.
Music to my ears. Music to my ears. And equity warriors. I like that a lot. That's what people need to start calling themselves when they're doing what you're saying. Equity warriors. I'm definitely gonna keep that in mind. To the audience, make sure you're keeping that in mind. Make sure you're understand how you're doing equity, how you're becoming an equity warrior. And so now tell us about how you got started with your organization.
With Brick House Unlimited? Which organization?
Yeah, with Brick House Unlimited.
Again, I believe that as long as you're alive, I mean, I'm still young, but I believe as long as you're alive, you should be learning and growing and evolving. And the work that I did as a principal was beyond like my wildest dreams. Like I've been an educator, you know, for 25 years, just celebrated, you know, my 25th anniversary. And I didn't see all of this from the beginning. You know, I came into DOE as a paraprofessional, which is a teacher's assistant, worked my way up through the ranks, you know, being a teacher and then a literacy coach supporting teachers, and because we have to make sure we're taking principals in a district, then principal 99, and so much more. But my role in being a principal was so much more than children passing a test, you know, and I was told during my tenure to make sure you keep the main thing the main thing. But to me, the main thing is making sure that children get loved, right? Because I can't get children to pass the test if they're not loved. I can't get children to pass the test, going back to Maslow, if their basic needs are not met. So everything that went into making sure my children were able to do well, right? I found that it actually involved the parents, it involved the families, it involved the community, because schools are not a separate entity from society. Schools are actually a reflection of. So as a principal sitting in the school, you know, I just knew that there was so much more that needed to be done in the work that I was doing with families. And then, you know, when the global pandemic hit, it impacted all of us. And I had so many parents thanking me for the work that I was doing to support them. Because my philosophy was what is it that you need from me so I can support you? Because I understood the connection. So when we're talking about strengthening, you know, homeschool connections, again, the school is a part of society. And so the school, like, that is a part of our responsibility as well, right? Because again, I cannot separate the child from the family. And if the child is in school, they're not going to be able to pass that test and do their best academically if they have so many other unmet needs, right? And it was this work that I did during my tenure as principal that made me say, you know what, it goes back to the community. And now, of course, I'm one person, so I could not do everything alone, you know, but I did have a strong team at Shine 399. And most importantly, I was able to tap into the community, you know, many different community-based organizations. So whatever it is that my school community needed support with, you know, I would come across fathers needed, you know, who may have recently been released from prison, who needed job support, you know, so then I would tap into somebody in the community to say, listen, I need you to come to my school and we need to do a job fair for our families. You know, we have weekly food drives, we had coat drives, we had, you know, workshops to support our families. So again, all of that work is connected, it's not separate and apart. And so during the pandemic, again, I just felt like I needed to do more. I needed to do so much more. And so ultimately, you know, my long-term goal is to retire myself from the Department of Education sooner rather than later, you know, and just devote my time full time to making sure that I am a part of the solution of strengthening families within the community and bridging the gap of those resources and making sure that our families have access and supporting schools in many different ways, that they need. Because in that is the main thing of making sure that our children are well.
So how can, yeah, I know you as an educator can really understand this, but how can we make a more positive school environment?
Making sure that each principal is aware of the demographics of his or her specific school, and based on the needs of the school community. And that's across the key constituents, the children, the staff, and the families, making sure that that an action plan is put in place to address that. And so at Shine 399, coming into a school that was ranked 29 out of 32 schools in a district, I knew that based on all of the demographic data of that school, because data is not just when children take a test, but based on the demographic data of the school community, I knew I needed to go in, I needed to improve the school facilities, right? I needed to improve instruction. I needed to provide professional development and different workshops to support staff and families, right? I needed to increase funding. And I was able to, successfully do that from the beginning of my role as tenure to the point where year one, I was principal of the year. And year four, millions of dollars have come into Shine 399 to support meeting the needs of the demographics of that particular school. And so that is my hope, to make sure that as I continue my work forward in supporting principals across, the New York City Department of Education, that every principal is able to meet the specific needs of their demographics, because education is not a cookie cutter approach, right? And I think sometimes people think it is, right? But it's not. And we most definitely cannot take the human element and the human factor out of this work. So the social justice issues that we are faced with in our societies are also in the school, right? Because schools are not a separate entity from society. So it is just as important that we address these needs, which will ultimately impact, students' academic achievement. So for me, it's definitely all connected. And I know the importance of continuing this work and supporting as many principals as possible.
I think students who understand that societal issues, outside of school issues are still issues that can affect you while inside of school. Those students who understand that, they like most obviously have a reason to be mad. So the reason why I'm saying that, I just want to start off with that, because the reason why I'm saying that is because going back to when Black Lives Matter was quote unquote trending, if for those who have TikTok, you get what I mean when I'm saying that, all those videos about Black Lives Matter. But anyways, when Black Lives Matter was really being talked about, that was when things were really being exposed and put on the forefront, police brutality, and it's still being put on the forefront now, but I'm saying when things were really starting up. So students at school, they were able to kind of like bring their knowledge, Black students were able to bring their knowledge, and then students like outside of that who didn't understand that would bring their quote unquote knowledge back. And, those Black students, I'm not talking on all of them, but they have a reason to be mad. Like we would have a reason to be mad because we're understanding that of all this hate is coming towards us just for the simple fact that we're Black, or the ignorance to Black skin color, all of that. And so for us to understand that these societal issues still affect us just for the simple fact that we're Black, we're bringing our knowledge back to the school, and we may want to educate others. We may want to do such and such. I mean, I know there was a lot of times where students who weren't Black would kind of just go up to their nearest Black person and ask about the history of Black people, just because police brutality and Black Lives Matter was so in their face, which is a whole nother story and a whole nother thing that I don't know if I even need to get into right now. But what I'm saying is, I'm just saying that these things should be able to, like, we should be able to talk about it and we should be able to express our emotions. It depends on what exactly you're doing with those emotions. But I'm saying, when it comes to school and you're talking to your peers, we should be able to calmly talk with one another in effort to, whether it be find solutions or understand things with each other, relate to each other. All these, there's a lot of different minority groups. That's most likely, that's one of the reasons why we have so many clubs in schools, why we have so many separate communities, or all these different things in schools. So when it comes to that, I just think that school truly is a good environment to convey yourself and talk, but it also depends on that type of school. There may be a predominantly such and such environment, and you may be the minority in that school, and it's harder for you to talk about your problems that you face as a Black person, a Hispanic person, an Asian person, all these different things, a disabled person, a gay person, it may be harder if that's not the majority, but we still should be able to talk about it, and the school should be an accepting environment. That's something that I think, I don't want to talk for everyone, but I'll say that's what I think more people should understand and more people should acknowledge and more people should know about. So I'm just saying that in general, like that's just my experience when it comes to schools. Again, I went to a predominantly white middle school, and because I was there for like a long time, I didn't realize people were doing they're called microaggressions. So like, you know what I mean? So people showing that mentality towards me, certain groups showing that mentality and rudeness and hatefulness towards me and towards my other Black peers, that was a wake-up call once I was in the 8th grade and I started to actually understand what they were doing. And then the biggest wake-up call was when I actually went through an extreme form of racism with students photoshopping my face onto racist images and continuing to bully me while in the actual school environment. So when it comes to bullying, we have so many different solutions, but it's the fact of the matter of like principals wanting to help put an end to this situation, or other students or school faculty. There's so many different types of people on the school staff that can help, but it's also a matter of how do you help? Do you want to help? When do you help? Like all these different things. And then it's also like there's so many different forms of bullying. We have bullying, then we have cyberbullying, physical, social, verbal. Then under that, we also, and we have racial too. Then under that, like say if it's racial bullying, what type of racial bullying? Was it cyber, physical, verbal, social? Like all these different things. And so I think more people need to understand. And by going to your workshops or going to your empowerment group, like all these different things, that's truly what we need in schools in order to make a better school environment for all. And with like smaller things as just like putting post-it notes on the walls of your school, if you're able to, that say positive affirmations. If you go to my social media, you will see I am the king of positive affirmations, always posting positive affirmations to help others' days. So by going to the school environment, and there's a lot of schoolwork, so it may be harder for that person in the day, or they may go through other things. By having that post-it note or by having that positive thing up, that you just help like lift their spirits like 90%, or that may be an exaggeration, but lift their spirits so much that it helps them get through the rest of their school day. That's what we should do. We need to uplift and we need to empower each other. We need to shine on others. We need to shine on each other, if I can say that. So again, kind of went a little bit long with what I said, Lakeasha, but I know you understand what I'm saying. You were nodding the whole time.
Absolutely. I'm in absolute agreement with everything that you said. And as an educator, I'm going to, on behalf of all educators, apologize to you for the unfortunate experience that you did encounter in school. And again, this is why for me, I lead with, I am a social justice community leader, right? Because education is not just about what's happening during the school day and children passing the test, right? It's so much more than that. And equity is not just about attending meetings. and talking about what needs to be done, right? But it is a mindset shift. It is a culture shift. It is looking at the demographics of individual schools and making sure that the educators, as the leaders, right, are leading this work and making sure that our children know, again, that they are loved, that we are affirming our children, and that we are educating our children way beyond the textbook. Because we all live in this world together. We all live in this society together. And if we're not taking care of all of our children, then it will impact all of our children. And I say that a lot, and I oftentimes repeat it because I'm like, let that sink in. It behooves us as human beings, right, to take care of all of the children because it impacts all of our children. And do we want that to be a positive, impact, or do we want that to be a negative impact? And so for me, our schools have to serve as, the gateway to making sure that our children are really and truly educated in worldly affairs and matters and developing empathy, right? Because everyone passes through educators. I don't care what you ultimately end up doing as an adult, right? Whether you're podcasting, whether you become a doctor, whether you're an entrepreneur, fashion this, it doesn't matter what you decide to do. And like the judges and officers, everybody must pass through educators.
You're right.
You know how powerful that is? Everyone must pass through educators. So if we're not adequately educating our children, then they're going to show up in the schools. They're going to show up on the police forces. They're going to show up in the military. They're going to show up in these companies and organizations as the CEOs and this, that, and the other. And then and then they're going to interact in a negative way with the society because they haven't been properly educated. So people oftentimes like to, quote Martin Luther King, and everybody loves him now. But we often forget that when Martin Luther King was alive, they persecuted him. Martin Luther King was assassinated, right? He was assassinated. He was murdered for believing in not just Black people, but uplifting all people. Like, that's why he was murdered, right? Because his message turned to, like, we are responsible for each other. And justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, which is why it is absolutely critical that as educators, we do this work in our schools. We have to do this work in our schools. And that's why as a principal, I led the way that I led. And as I move on, in my educational journey, my goal is to impact as many different school communities as I possibly can, because I believe in this work, right? I believe that this is the work. This is the necessary work. And like John Lewis oftentimes said, you have to be willing to get into some good trouble, right? If you want to make a difference in history, you have to be willing to be misunderstood, mocked, and different things of that nature. But this is the word. So when I talk about being an equity warrior, this is absolutely the work, because no child should have to experience what you experience in any school across our country.
Now, Lakeasha, you obviously have a lot going on. You are obviously doing a lot of great things. Now, I want to ask you about how you balance that out. So what do you do in your downtime?
I love to travel.
Okay.
I love to travel. And on another podcast, we've been talking about my trip to Bali, but I absolutely love traveling. Again, it's educational for me. It's enjoying, like, learning about different cultures. Again, like, the education is beyond the classroom. It's beyond the school building. But traveling helps me to de-stress and relax. I'm also a lover of all things related to music. I can't sing, but I love to sing. and I absolutely love dancing, and I enjoy my family, you know, spending time with my family and friends, and my beautiful granddaughter, who, like you said earlier, you know, is the CEO of her own company, Simility Nail Polish. So those are the things that bring me joy, and I absolutely believe in living a balanced life. So sure, I'm on this podcast and we're talking about all things important that matter, but you can't pour from an empty cup. So I truly believe in making sure that I'm pouring into Keisha, I'm pouring into Shine, right? To make sure that I am able to share my gifts with the world.
What's been the most challenging part of your journey?
The most challenging part of my journey, again, you know, like I mentioned earlier, John Lewis, good trouble. When you are an equity warrior, when you do stand for something, when you do speak up, when you do focus on your shining your light as brightly as you can, you know, unfortunately, people want to silence that. And so that is, you know, the most challenging thing. And unfortunately, sometimes it's the people that look like you. But I am steadfast in what I believe is my purpose. You know, I do believe in God. I believe in a higher power, and I believe that this is my gift and contribution to the world, and I will continue to be that voice, to be that vessel to help as many different children as I possibly can and families across the community.
What's your most rewarding part of your journey?
The children get it. The children get it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, when children pass a test, but when children know and understand that I love them, and when they are happy to share their progress. So like that was the key word for me in my school community. Are you making progress? Right? And so when children love to share that, when children are on the stage, you know, so in Shine 399, like my school community was the first elementary school in Brooklyn, probably New York City, to participate in TED Talk. And school year 1920, before the pandemic happened, my children were able to share their stories, right, on the stage of Medgar Evers College. And those are experiences that my children will never forget. So when my children feel powered and they feel proud and they know that they make a difference, and, you know, my student government got together and they interviewed our local elected officials and community leaders, such as Eric Adams, you know, like, come and talk to my children. They have some concerns. But again, because of the way I led in my school, my student government every year, like, they got to bring their concerns to me. What is it that, you know, you want to, what problems do you want to solve, and how can I support you? And during that year, you know, my children, it was like the elections was taking place in New York City, and my children, they wanted the politicians who were running for office to address their concerns. And they had concerns such as food insecurity, homelessness, violence, elementary school children. So again, I think about your experience and I'm like, wow, like, you would have done so well, you know, if you were a student in my school, because everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to feel validated, and everyone needs the necessary resources and tools that they need so that they know they matter and they know that they are an equity warrior. So for my children to experience that at such an early age, like, that is the absolute most rewarding experience for me. For my children to become business owners themselves in my school, right? I had an organization that I partnered with, SMEL, Stimulating Minds, through entrepreneurship and leadership development for children. And again, my children as early as kindergarten was learning about writing business proposals and opening up their own businesses. So when I say Brick House Unlimited is about our families, it is absolutely about that. It's not just about my granddaughter having her own business. It's not just about Lakeasha Williams, you know, having her own business, but it's about my contribution to the world and making sure that I am a part of the solution to create the systemic change across all facets of our school community, of our society in general, to make sure that our children are well and to make sure that our families are well. So that is the absolute most rewarding part of this work for me.
Now, Shine. If you were to sum up in a couple of sentences, or, you know, I want you to sum up in a couple of sentences how do you race to speak up?
How do you race to speak up?
Mm-hmm. How are you creating that positive change? I know you've been telling us it the whole time, but I want you to sum it up in a couple of sentences. How do you race to speak up?
Um, I'm thinking back to the different types of feedback that I received during my principal journey. And it may seem simple enough, but it's not always so simple. But being transparent, right? Or whatever role you play, whether you may be the leader in that organization. Well, if you're the leader, because you have to create the successful environment, right? Being very transparent, listening to other people, creating a safe space so that others feel comfortable enough to express themselves and share their concerns. But vulnerability is key. Vulnerability is key for the leader, right? To know and understand their own areas of expertise and areas of growth so that we're able to work together as a team, whether it be in a school, such as myself, whether it be in a different agency or whatever. But I believe that leadership is not about titles. Leadership is about your understanding of people skills, right? Your understanding of your role, the role that you play with connecting people together, right? And your series of action steps to help to positively impact the lives of others. And I know that was more than a few sentences, but if I had to give you like 4 key takeaways, right? Then for Race to Speak Up, the 4 key takeaways would be having a growth mindset, teamwork, high expectations, and work ethic. And I feel like when people possess those skills, then we're able to come together as a community to make sure that everyone within that organization, within that school community, feels comfortable enough and competent enough to voice their concerns and know that they are a part of the solution, which is why, for me, bullying, I would love to see a shift, right, with making sure that we are empowering our children to know that they are equity warriors.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was definitely my pleasure.
Would you like to share your social media platforms and how people can find and contact you?
Sure. You can follow me on Instagram at principal_shine on Lakeasha. And that is Lakeasha spelled Lakeasha. So principal_shine on Lakeasha. And I do have a website for my company, brickhouseunlimited.com. And I am currently, just seeking to engage my community outreach efforts to do more work within our marginalized communities and marginalized agencies, such as going to the prison systems, visiting shelters, the foster care agencies, because again, our community does not lack anything except access and resources. So the goal of Brick House Unlimited is to make sure I close the access gap and impact as many people as I possibly can.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you to everyone listening. I hope to see all of you at future Race to Speak Up podcast. And if anyone ever has any questions about the Race to Speak Up podcast, always feel free to contact me at racetospeakup@gmail.com. Follow at Race to Speak Up on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for updates on future podcasts. Head over to my website, www.racetospeakup.com, to check out all things Race to Speak Up and join the Humanity Rising movement. Humanity Rising offers scholarships for students making a difference in the world through service. Visit www.humanityrising.org for more information. And remember to ask yourself this very one question: how do you race to speak up?